Liquidation, it's a great way to buy merchandise, but in this particular video, I'm going to show you how I really screwed up royally. And I'm going to tell you what I'm doing about it. So let's talk about it on the other side. So without any further ado, let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is John for Flippin' Ain't Easy. Yeah, I had a bad buy, and it was one of those things where with liquidation, you're going to sometimes take a chance, and sometimes you're going to get bit in the butt. Let me just say that liquidation is a good way to source. And while a lot of you may source at yard sales, may source at thrift stores, well, it's going to start getting too cold for yard sales here for a lot of you guys. And for me, liquidation is probably the easiest way to churn and grind and make a living at this business without, going here and going there. I can go to one location, find a pallet, maybe even go online, like I did in this particular case, get a pallet and just go pick it up whenever I'm ready. I can set my own time, my own appointment, or have it delivered to you, depending on your situation. But I find that with the price of gas, freight is just too high, and it really eats into your profit, and it escalates your cost of goods. So again, you guys know me, I'm always trying to bring my cost of goods down so that I can have more room to make a profit and give discounts to my customers to move some of these items. Now the situation at hand was I was looking for some merchandise, and I utilize a few different vendors out here in Vegas. One local vendor, liquidation.com, is one of my go-tos when things are really tough to find, and a lot of times I'll focus on a few different vendors that I'm used to dealing with at that site and have bought from before and have had good success from. So no exception here. About a week and a half ago, I went on, checked out some pallets that were sort of intriguing to me. They were larger than the normal Gaylord, the open face Gaylord pallets that many of you guys have seen me buy before. So they were, instead of being like a 4-foot tall Gaylord, we're looking at like a 6-foot tall Gaylord. And the exception here was that there is a piece of cardboard placed on the top, a picture of the sides, maybe one from the top, to see, so you can see what you're getting. And a lot of times, and the red flag for me on this particular one was the ones that they were selling this particular day, and they had multiple lots for sale. They had a piece of cardboard covering the top of the open face Gaylord, so you couldn't see what was inside of it. So that brought the value down to me a little bit in my eyes, where I wasn't going to spend a whole lot. I'd like to be able to see, to get a general idea of the assortment of things you're going to get. Generally, you're going to get like, it's a lot of stuff. This is an Amazon returns pallet, and it was marked as returns. And generally, you're going to get a mix of different stuff, all right? And anything that Amazon sells is pretty much what you're going to end up with. And that's what I was expecting. Now, I'm going to talk to you about some things that I could have done differently, maybe give you some tips going forward. Thankfully, I only spent $444 out the door. That's with the actual price of the pallet that I bid. I bid it up to $400, I think. That was my actual endpoint, to be honest with you. There is a 10% or 11% fee that goes to liquidation.com, and I was the winner, and I was able to pick it up the following week, which was this last Friday. So fast forward to Friday, and I don't have a truck. Okay, that's one of the challenges that I have with the liquidation business, is that when I'm picking stuff up, generally your average size 4-foot Gaylord will fit into my SUV with the seats all down, and that's just the way I roll. It works for me. I've never really had an issue, but I knew that this is going to be a bigger pallet, so I had Jenna come with me. She brought her car, and we made it work. It's only about 7-8 miles away, so it's not that far. We get down there and we wait an hour beyond our appointment time, which is what it is. It gets delivered out to our area where we're parked. And what I do is I take my trusty box cutter, and we just cut the sides down, and we just start loading stuff in the car. But when we did that, we noticed that there's a lot of food, a lot of case-packed food, and honestly, that isn't such a bad thing. I mean, you might think that it's a bad thing to have food, and it's not a good thing to sell, but that stuff can sell. But there's a problem. When you're dealing with expiration dates or best by dates, that is an actual problem, because see, once you're beyond the best by date, you can't even really donate it. And so we ended up getting a lot of this stuff loaded in the car, brought it home, started going through it to sort through it, and 70% of it was expired. And this stuff was from last year, stuff that should have been liquidated last year, because there's a lot of Halloween and some Christmas stuff that was also in this particular pallet. And that's not a problem, because right now we're dealing with Halloween stuff. We're going to get that stuff listed, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. I don't have to sit on that merchandise for 6-8 months before I can sell it. And I know a lot of this stuff sells year round, but I'm not going to take the time to list stuff that may have one unicorn buyer here, one unicorn buyer there in April. I'm looking for seasonal merchandise around the season that I'm going to be listing it, which happens to be right now. So it worked out on that part of it. So that's the silver lining in this. But the problem that I faced was, and as you can see with a lot of these photos here, these items were expired, and by, in some cases, almost a year. As you can imagine, we're dealing with maybe being able to get my money back, because some of the stuff, that the other 30%, was really just not very good merchandise. A lot of cheap items, a lot of stuff that you want to avoid. Thankfully, I'm going to lot a lot of it up, sell it, move it quickly. We were able to find some merchandise that looked pretty good. But you know what? I normally would accept this, write it off as a loss. It's the chances you take when you're buying liquidation. And it was only $444 after it was all said and done. For me, there's a problem. And the problem is that you can't sell, really, you shouldn't sell any kind of merchandise well beyond the expiration. That's why they make Amazon sellers have their merchandise pulled from stock whenever there's like a month or two left before the best by date, okay? It's not safe. It's not safe for public consumption. Now, I know there's an argument to be made that we're a wasteful country and food will last beyond the best by date. That's why a lot of the merchandise is marked as best by. But at what point? Are we talking a month, 2 months? A lot of this stuff was over a year. So maybe I can keep some of this for myself, which I'm not going to do. I'm not that trusting of stuff beyond the best by date. That's just me. I'm certainly not going to donate it. I'm certainly not going to try to sell it when it's beyond the best by date, because if someone gets sick, that's a liability, and that's not one I want to deal with. And I think that's a liability that this particular company has taken when they knowingly sold or listed merchandise for sale that was well beyond the expiration date. So that's what I'm dealing with right now. Contacted liquidation.com. Now I'm somewhat, I've filed 2 complaints with liquidation.com over the last 3 years. The first time was the first lot that I bought, when I bought a bunch of AirPods, Apple AirPods, and I'd say 70% of them were just empty boxes. And not only did they honor my dispute request, they gave me quite a bit more than I asked for. But the next time I filed a dispute, it was for a bunch of Roombas that should have been salvage and were labeled as returns. These were like already open, parted out. It was just the guts of the Roombas. I think we only had like 2 Roombas out of the entire lot that was actually good. Everything else is just parts, and thankfully we did a lot of loose parts or repair items that we sold on eBay to make our money back. You got to get creative sometimes with these lots, but there is no way to get creative when you have old, expired merchandise. And for me, I filed a dispute. This should never even have been given away let alone being resold. And that's my argument. It's a health and safety issue as far as I'm concerned. If I wasn't someone that knew to look for expiration dates, I could maybe, a lot of this is like soy milk and Slim Fast, and let alone I probably need Slim Fast, but I don't want to get sick in the process. The whole idea of Slim Fast is something that's going to hold you over to the next meal, not send you to the bathroom every 5 minutes. So certainly I'm not trying to do all that. I'm just trying to make a living here, and you can sell these case packed items. And I was very disappointed. We're talking cases of like the soy milk, individually bottled soy milk, Slim Fast, just different merchandise. Normally I would be, all right, cool, I can make my money back easily. I can not only make my money back, but if priced properly, priced to sell, I can make probably 2 to 3x my money. Not quite where I want to be on a pallet, but it's not a disaster either, because a disaster is basically trying to make your money back, which is, if this dispute fails, is what I'm going to be trying to do. And I'm going to come up way short, because the merchandise that I have for sale that's good to sell isn't all that good, like I said. So that's my situation. I don't have quite an update. There's a 10-day period where they have to look over the facts of the case. I submitted 52 photos with the expiration date issues circled. My opinion, pallet was sold a year too late, and would have been a pretty decent pallet. I mean, they had it assembled about a year ago, maybe 10, 11 months ago. Why they sat on it, I don't even understand, but I'd say this would be an acceptable pallet if it was sold basically in January or February, when most of this stuff was still relatively within its expiration or best buy dates. So my takeaway from this is, one thing I could have done better, and just to give you guys some tips on this, if you have an open face Gaylord pallet, okay, generally if it's covered, there's probably a reason why. That's a red flag. And I know a lot of people are turned off by seeing food in the pallets for the very same reasons that I'm dealing with right now. And they're less inclined to bid and bid up the pallet. It probably would have only gone for a couple $100 if it showed all the food that was in there. Now, another thing is your general pallet, your general size pallet is going to weigh, and I'm talking about just miscellaneous merchandise, is going to weigh about 400 to 500 pounds. And that's your average size 4-foot high open face Gaylord, about 400 to 500 pounds. These pallets were weighing anywhere between 700 and 800 pounds. And I saw it and I thought, well, maybe it's because it's a little bit bigger Gaylord. Instead of a 4-foot Gaylord, it's a 6-foot Gaylord. But the math still isn't there. If you think about it, it should be only about 600 pounds, not 800. And this one I bought was 800 pounds. And that tells you one of two things. Either you're dealing with like big reams of paper, which you don't want. That's something you don't want. Big liquid items like bleach, Ask Archie, sanitizer, things like that, things that aren't going to move. Or in this case, food, and of course big cases of soy milk that's been expired 9 months, Slim Fast that's been expired for almost a year, a lot of heavy bulk food items. And that doesn't fly in this business. I mean, if you're a food bank trying to get food, I guess this would be a great pallet last year. But certainly, I don't see how anyone could benefit. And Liquidation.com, they know their market. They know that most people are resellers in this business. And for them to knowingly, and I don't blame it on Liquidation.com. I blame it on the particular seller here who decided that it was a good idea to sell, in my opinion, salvage merchandise, which old food should be considered salvage merchandise, that nobody can benefit from. So I learned a lesson here. I learned a lesson, and I guess anytime we make a mistake in the resale business, we should always try to learn from it so we don't repeat from our mistakes again. That's the biggest mistake you can make, is to continue to repeat the same mistake over and over again. When a liquidator covers up what should be an open face Gaylord, that should be the first red flag. And if you have a really heavy pallet, in this case double what it normally would be, that's a telltale sign. And I totally whiffed on that. I saw it and I didn't really come to the right conclusion, but now it's something I'm definitely going to consider for next time. And I will, if I'm faced with those two situations, a covered open face Gaylord, which should always remain open for photos, and a very heavy pallet, time to run the other way. So guys, What do you think about this particular buy? I know I whiffed, but please comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. I make mistakes too. I've bought pallets for the last 3 years. I've probably purchased over 150 pallets during that time. And that's not an exaggeration, from many different vendors. And I'd say 90% of the time I'm winning. Another 7-8% of that I'm maybe breaking even. And like this is like the 1, 2, 3% of the time where you're just scrambling to make what you can and salvage something good out of a bad buy. But I promise you, liquidation isn't as bad as this situation normally. Otherwise, I'd be out of business. So I want your comments down below. That would be awesome. While you're at it, hit that like button. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. And of course, hit that notification bell so you can be notified the next time I make a video. So liquidation, you're going to win most of the time, provided you do your homework and you take a look and you notice the red flags, which I failed to do in this particular situation, and you do things, you buy sort of defensively so that you don't get stuck with stuff that you can't sell, like in this case, old food. But yet, it's just another example of how flipping ain't easy. And I want you guys to have an excellent start to your week, and we will talk to you very soon.